Hey everyone, thank you for joining us. I am so excited to have Igor with us. Igor runs a training organization at Learn Apex. He's based out of Germany, and I think we're going to have a very interesting conversation. So, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over. Igor, would you like to do a short introduction for our viewers, please?
Yeah, thank you for having me. So basically, what I do is that I help people in Salesforce to become Salesforce developers. I focus mostly on senior people, Salesforce admins, Salesforce senior consultants, to basically advance their career through coding. And that's what I've been doing for a very long time. I am also focusing a lot on helping junior developers to become not so junior anymore and actually become senior developers. And we've had a lot of students. We had over 500 students in this 2025 year, so we are growing a lot. And I'm seeing a lot of things in Salesforce ecosystem that are related to AI, just general trends, and I am excited to talk about this.
Very, very cool. There's a lot of conversation going around AI for development and coding, and I'm curious to hear, what you are seeing with your students and in general in the ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that first of all, I think that AI is kind of one of the greatest technologies that we are experiencing, because I grew up already in the world where there was internet, there was phone, there was already computers, right? I'm young enough to not have lived through world without internet. So to me, to my lifetime, this is the single best technology that I've ever seen and witnessed. So it's very exciting to kind of see how this technology is gonna impact our lives, uh, not only professional lives but also everyday lives, right? And it's been already at least like 3 years, I think, since ChatGPT, and I cannot imagine living without ChatGPT, right? And I'm sure that a lot of people are like me, right? Who are like just going to ChatGPT or Claude for all the other small questions that we have. And there are also a lot of people who probably don't have this AI, so there's still a lot of improvement that we can have. But I'm excited how this technology is gonna basically reshape the whole world, all the ways we work and learn. And I'm also a little bit concerned because I think that there's in AI there's also a lot of stuff that we really have to be careful about. And I personally work a lot with the people who are trying to learn something new, right? So I work with people who are, for example, Salesforce admins, and they have never ever touched any code in their life. Okay, so they are like, okay, we need to learn coding. So when you want to learn coding, there's a big inclination to basically start using AI, right? So for example, you wanna go to ChatGPT and ask, hey, how do I become a developer? How do I do this? How do I do that? Right? And this is all good. But at some point, when I see people getting way too reliant on AI, I think there's a big thing that the productivity of learning and us as people, it really drops down. And this is something that I kind of really want to speak probably more about, is that AI is kind of this double-edged sword, basically, where you can have a lot of productivity on one hand, right? And you can learn new cool things with it. But at the same time, when you always rely on AI in your everyday life, when you try to learn something new and you always, the first thing you do is just go to AI, and AI spits out you all the code that you need, there's no learning in it. So at the same time, AI can be very productive, and it can be also very unproductive for one person or maybe for a business as well.
True, that's a great point. How are you seeing developers use AI? In terms of coding, do you see existing developers amplifying their capability, or you're back to your point? You're seeing just new ones going and saying, "Write me a trigger," and it just writes, and
Yes.
they copy paste it.
I think I think one of the very important things is that the more the more advanced you are as a developer, the more you can benefit from AI at this point. It's true that you can also benefit when you're not a developer, right? But I think the ability of wipe code just goes so much exponentially higher if you have at least a little bit of idea what are you doing. So for example, if I try to wipe code something using a language that I have absolutely no idea about, and I have never ever coded anything, it would go very wrong, right? At some point, AI will just say, okay, we coded enough. We coded here 1 million lines of, of code, and AI will not be able to maintain all those millions of lines of code anymore. And then you're going to have all the errors around, right? And you will be like, oh, okay, so what do I do now? Right? So this is important for people to kind of have in mind that a lot of those tools, they're kind of getting better the better you are getting, and it's a nice way for you to basically, as a senior developer, to be a little bit even more productive than you are right now. So this one thing. Another thing is that we have, like what I see in Salesforce, we have a couple of things. So we have the Agent Force, right? Agent Force for vibes. I think that's the new thing. That's the vibe coding tool. And then we have the second thing is non-Salesforce tools, like for example, Klein or the Cursor that I'm using. And I've been using them for quite a long time. I'm pretty sure I used Cursor for since it came out, and it's really great. Those tools are really really good. And if you know a little bit of coding, I think you can develop really cool things. For example, for my last course that we launched, instead of actually asking my developer to do something, I just vibe coded in an evening some like simple website, and I just posted it on LinkedIn, and people start basically taking the going to the website. So I think it's amazing the type of things we can do right now with the AI, and those tools like Cursor or Klein, they're really really great at helping us with this. Now, with the Agent Force, I was skeptical for a very long time. With the Agent Force, I was really skeptical, and I think Agent Force still has actually like a lot of work to do. But the new one, the Agent Force, the vibes, I think it's actually pretty great. I think it's pretty great actually. So yeah, that's my opinion on the tools that we have. So this is how I see how developers basically use. A lot of developers use those Cursor and all of this. And I think if you're smart about this, how you use those tools, I think you can be way more productive with them. But you also have to be careful what is your goal, right? If your goal is to develop something fast, then you should be using them, right? If your goal is to vibe code something in an evening, then absolutely go and use it. And you don't really care about security, you don't really care about like all the data handling and all of this. But if your goal is to learn something and become a better developer, then sometimes it maybe makes more sense to actually be slower, run into more errors, and try to fix those errors yourself with just the good old Googling and Stack Overflow, basically.
That's a really good point, and I would agree that I think there's a lot of value of vibe coding and cursor and Klein code and Klein and Cloud code and all of them, particularly around prototyping. I think they're
Mm.
excellent for, like to your point, like in an evening you can prototype a couple of things, see the user experience, do it in a dev org or a scratch org, and that way you're kind of not, you really don't care at that point about a lot of other things that a production grade feature may care about. So I'm not considering security, performance, scalability at that point. It's more like, how would it look, how would it feel, what's the interaction design going to be, what's the user experience going to be. And if you were just demoing it internally to build a consensus about around something, I think it's an excellent way to accelerate that. And so that effectively we are reducing the gap there in terms of how quickly we can iterate and help a lot of people get on board with an idea. And then, of course, you can then maybe switch gears and have someone very seasoned do it with a mix of hand coding and vibe coding to, there's probably a balance in there somewhere in terms of how much you would want to do. So that's how
But
I'm seeing it too. Any comments on that? Go ahead.
yeah. So I what I see in there is that, like, to add to your point is that it's really great tool for someone who is not a developer to a little bit take the work of a developer if it's needed. Like for example, for a product owner, right, or a project manager, to get a little bit, as you say, with the prototyping, or to just get and test around a certain solution, right, where it's not maybe your main job, right, but you can still use those vibe coding tools to basically do a proof of concept, or like just develop a certain prototype. And on top of that, what I see, and I think there's a big potential for that, is for people who want to start their own like side business, something like this. I think it's a nice tool to very quickly test different ideas, because you can, as you said, you can prototype something, you can put it out on the market, right? Doesn't have to be something inside of Salesforce, can be also something that you're in general seeing, like what kind of business you want to start. You can put it out and see if people get some response or not, and then based on that you can already make next steps. So this is just what I wanted to add to your point.
True, true. Are you seeing it differently used by like admins and BAs?
Yeah, i think I think one of the limitations that we have is that agent force is not as much as a mm, it's, I would say, for me personally, agent force is not on par with other tools that we have on the market. Like for example, we have those companies like N8N or make.com, or we have the ChatGPT builder now, right? So this is something that allows you to build different agents. I think Salesforce agent force is not as good as those tools are, and I think that's the reason why the what I see is that admins using a little bit less of AI in comparison to developers, in terms of something that you can do hands-on, right? Because developers, what we can do, we want to have a trigger, as you said. We want to have a trigger. Hey, Claude, hey, ChatGPT, give me a trigger. Here's trigger. I adjusted, done, right? If you're an admin and if you want to do a permission set, well, you're still gonna have to go and do it on your own with like old-fashioned clicking way, right? Or if you want to do a flow, you're still gonna have to do the flow, even though you can kind of get a little bit ahead with the AI with those things by asking how can I do that or that. But I think in general, the ability that AI has in coding versus the non-coding thing, I think it's just so much different. Because in coding, AI is right now at this point is pretty good. So the developers who use AI, I think they can get ahead and they can use it a little bit more efficient, and that builds this positive feedback loop, and people start using it more and more and more. And I think at this point, AI in coding is very powerful in comparison to AI that is not coding, like agents or Agent Force or something that is built on top of Salesforce.
Great. I'm curious if you have any perspective on how can someone get started. So if you are a new developer or in an organization which may have experienced developers and they are like, let's bring more AI into our day-to-day operation. Do you have any opinion on how they can go about doing it?
Yeah. So what I usually recommend people is not to go and like. So there are a lot of different courses on AI, and I don't really think it's a it's a good idea to do them. I think the best thing is um trying to take something in your daily life, basically, right, or in your daily job, and trying to implement this using AI, right? For example, one of the things that I try to do for my business is that I was trying to automate the payment flow, right? So someone pays for certain thing, and then there are a couple of steps that need to be done manually that they cannot be done with the automation at this point. But I was trying to automate this with the AI, which is interesting. Can you build an agent that actually does it what you're doing at this point, right? So I think this is one of the ways you can start. And the most important, what I would recommend if someone is like, okay, I have not been using AI. If you have not been using AI, maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you shouldn't. If you could do your job until this for the last 3 years, for the last crazy 3 years with AI, without AI, maybe if that's not a pressing issue for you, maybe you shouldn't be doing, right? So, for example, a good example, I have a running coach. I got into running recently, and he's using zero AI, right? And he doesn't need to, right? Because you don't need AI to run, because you have to actually run with your own legs. So I think there are a lot of examples like this in Salesforce as well, right? So like designers, for example, they can use AI to some extent, but at the end, maybe sometimes you just have to design something yourself, right? And I think that if you've been avoiding this whole AI thing, you're not necessarily right now missed out so much. So you can still get into this AI. Probably shouldn't be waiting for a very long time though to kind of get familiar with the AI, so that you don't end up like this developer who are like in 2010 or 2015 and they never used Google and they say, "Ah, I don't need Google," right?
True, true. But for organizations that actually want to incorporate this, and for teams that want to bring AI into their development flow, uh, are there any suggestions you have on how they should go about doing it? Are you doing anything with your students?
Yeah. So I have, as I said, I have a little bit of a special case because for what's important for me personally is that people actually learn something new. And when you're starting with a new topic, uh, AI, again, it can help you a lot and it can also slow you down a lot. So I think what's important is that always to keep in mind. So I cannot speak about organizations, right? I run my own business and we are not using much AI, except for like very simple cases, like for example, transcription or something like this, right? So we're not really using, because we don't really have any. We don't have like, it's very simple structures. Basically, just me's whole business. So I don't have any any advice for the business owners or for the companies or for the teams, but I do have advice for people who are starting out with coding and or coding, or in general that they want to learn something new. And the point of learning something new is to struggle, basically, as not good as it sounds, but the point is to struggle, right? The point is to make your brain like move a little bit and go into the topics that you don't want, that your brain doesn't know, right? So it's an uncomfortable feeling, and there's this tendency of easily saying, okay, so this, then if it's uncomfortable, I'm gonna go ask AI. But the real learning happens exactly when it's uncomfortable, right? So when you go through these errors and you stare at the error for a very long time, and you're kind of trying to fix the error, you're kind of trying to do the problem, but you cannot do it, right? And then you, at some point, tomorrow you come back next day and then you actually fix the error, right? So this is where the learning happens. But on the other hand, you also don't want to completely not use AI. AI is very important. AI can help you to learn everything so much faster. So like in a lot of courses that I run, like a lot of different cohorts or something, I tell people don't use AI. And then they take it way too literally, and then they absolutely use absolutely zero AI, and then they end up being slower than they could be, right? So it's important that you can use AI. It's just, the point is that you need to use AI to actually learn something new, and not to substitute your own thinking, right? That's the most important part. This is my message basically to the people who want to start with the AI, who want to kind of implement AI in their daily life.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because the way I see it is I use AI a fair bit to brainstorm, right? I'll ask it, hey, I'm thinking about it this way. What are like three other ways of doing it?
Mm,
And if it tells me something, then I'll ask more questions on why would I do it this way? What are the considerations? What are the challenges? Wait, if I do this, these are the other four things that I will have to think about. So I kind of find it a really good, non-judgmental, very patient, thinking partner
hmm
to just kind of constantly brainstorm on things. But I agree with you. I don't think of it as like I'm just gonna give it to AI and go to bed and then it'll just do it all for me. I think
Yeah.
it can do a good job of amplifying and improving productivity, but not completely replacing our entire thinking or problem solving.
Yeah. And I think it's a really good use case actually. Like brainstorming, or just in general, sometimes I would just sit down and like go back and forth with the AI about a certain topic, trying to understand and learn about certain topic. And that's very interesting because AI just knows every single thing about all the topics, and it's a very good, it's a very good thing. I think another feature that a lot of people actually sleeping on is this feature of research, of a long research that you have in ChatGPT and Claude. I think this is just incredible feature that allows you to dive deep into topics. So if you're getting into a new topic, right, like running, for example, for me was, or
Mhm.
anything, or Apex, or maybe marketing, or like leading a team or something like this, then I think it makes sense to just run a couple of these deep research queries on the topic that you want to learn about, and after that, kind of go and dive deeper yourself about on those topics. I think it's one of the underrated features that people kind of don't use enough.
True. And I think, like along the same lines, if I was to use a thinking, model or ask it to do deep research, I really like using AI for things. I don't like to read a lot, just so So I want AI to do a bit of reading for me, and I will say, hey, give me a little bit more on these architectural patterns that I have looked at or seen some videos or maybe eyeballed some material on it online. And then it'll be like, okay, here is what you can do. And then I can ask it, okay, how does TOGAF differ from some of the principles that well architected is talking about? Like, are there any nuances, right? Like whatever it is, I'm just making this up. But
Mhm.
the idea is understanding what all exists out in the universe and getting information in a way that works for you. And then maybe it can point you to resources that you can go read or play around with. But in a lot of ways, it's kind of taking away the lack of context that happens with a Google search, right? I search something and then I search something else. So my second search is completely unrelated to the first one, right? Google does not think that way, but a chat GPT or a Claude or Perplexity would, where I would say, give me this, and then, oh, in this, now dive deeper into this. What about this aspect, right? So it's maintaining a continuity of conversation and context that makes that interaction so much more rich and more useful to me as an end user.
Yeah, I think what's very important is the specificity. I think that's the biggest thing about the AI is that you can have your own very specific case that you will never be able to actually Google, right? Something that's very specific that you're working on right now, and Google just can't help you with this, right? You would need to take this very specific problem and break it down to small problems that you can Google, right? That will be the old-fashioned way. And right now you can just take this case immediately and upload it and get this breakdown or get understanding from the AI. And that's very important. That's the life changing. I think that's the whole AI thing, and it's amazing.
True. Do you have any sort of interesting story from your cohorts around somebody who came in and they just did not want to use any AI, and by the time they were done, they are just like they cannot live without it?
Okay, so I actually have the other way around.
Okay.
I hired a developer for it was about 1.5 years ago. So I hired a developer. So 1.5 years ago, I think it was a time of GPT 3.5 or GPT 4 just came out. So AI wasn't that advanced back then. And this developer actually, so he ignored the AI and he said, I'm just not going to use it at all. And I'm just going to code all the time without AI. And I'm going to be just doing everything by hand. The old fashioned way, no vibe coding, no GitHub Copilot, no suggestions, just going to code every single thing on my own. And it was the best developer I've ever hired.
Hmm.
And he just absolutely overperformed on his job, and he was by far the best developer I've ever worked with. And to this day, he's still working with me. He's just not working full time with me anymore. But he's incredible. He built a lot of key tools that we have at our company right now, and he's still not using a single AI tool. And it's amazing. It's interesting. I personally, I'm not like him. I wouldn't be able to do that. But because he was doing everything the old-fashioned way, he grew in those 1.5 years so much that he grew basically from a junior to almost like a senior within like 2 years, because he was working a lot. He was a really good developer, and he was not using any AI. And it's an interesting case of the other way around, right? Because a lot of people, they expect, okay, like someone joined, then used a lot of AI to grow faster. But there are also the other way around, right? Where people on purpose, particularly this developer on purpose, Sasha, his name, so Sasha on purpose didn't use AI and grew very fast. So I think what's important here is to find what works for you, right? There's stories that people use AI and because of AI grow very fast. Okay, so I had those students too, right? I had students who just were using AI, and because of AI they could just learn everything so much faster. But there are also stories like Sasha where people go the opposite direction. And I think what's important is that to find something that works for you personally, be it all the time AI or no AI, absolutely. Just the most important, does it work for you? If yes, it's good.
That's a very interesting point. I agree. I think I didn't think about it. Like there is this crazy race where everybody wants to be just all AI all the time. And there are people who just steadfastly refuse to do that and do it other way. I do think that you're seeing an environment where the expectation of businesses, of end users, of the markets is changing so much so quickly that the idea that, unless you're extremely good, like the person you're referring to, you may find it as a handicap that, you're trying to
Yeah.
run while the rest of the world is taking the train. So no matter how fast you run, the train's going to probably get there quicker. So I think it's a bit of that trend that we are starting to see. Perhaps there is, I do agree. I think in the initial years there is a significant value in learning how to code manually, by hand, and making sure that you understand the underlying constructs. But once you get to a point where you can eyeball code and say, okay, this looks good, or there are these flaws, right? Once you're at the level of fluency of someone who could review other people's code, then you can probably use AI more effectively because you at
Yeah.
least know what it's doing, which direction it's going in. Um, as you
And
mentioned, using cursor and others, I tried that for certain prototypes, and it will try to invent and kind of reinvent the wheel. And you're like, wait, you already did this. Like, oh, you're right. Let me go back and fix it.
yeah. Yeah. And I think, yeah, I think it's still important to use AI though. Like the example that I mentioned, I think it's more of a on the other side. Like it's outlier example. I think it's important to use AI because this is a new technology, and if you don't use the new technology, you're gonna be left behind at some point.
And particularly, I think because it's no longer a fashion thing, right? Like the way markets are moving, the way companies are moving, there is an extremely high expectation of shipping faster. And when you want to ship faster at scale, I think you have to find a balance between how much you develop by hand and how much you apply AI. I still I'm skeptical about this. I can do 100% of development with AI. I'm not there. My company is not there. Uh, but there are people who make that claims. I'm thinking Bay Area probably has a lot of people who are, significantly incorporating AI into their day-to-day workflow compared to the rest of us out there. But I definitely see like it has to start becoming a part of your SDLC, even if it's not, a significant portion. It may be 10, 20, 50%, depending on your organizational or your individual level of comfort with it. But it seems to be headed that way. And again, to your point, the agent force vibe is an example of Salesforce recognizing that trend.
Yes. Salesforce, I think that I think it's more of a relevant for bigger companies uh, to use AI than for individuals. And I think the big companies, if they're not gonna get on this AI train, I think they're gonna be left behind. They're gonna die eventually. So I'm happy to see that Salesforce recognizes that um, AI is important, and I hope that it's gonna work out for Salesforce. Otherwise, it might decline over the next 10, 20 years.
Yeah, I can see that. I also get a sense that internal IT has a lot of challenges too, right? Like if you work in a large enterprise in the internal IT team, you have to kind of balance the two, right? Your stakeholder expectations in terms of getting things done faster, and also the legacy you have, the technical debt you have, right? Like things that were not done well. You may have had a lot of consultants or contractors or ex-employees and maybe not enough documentation. So I really see this sort of wave around, change intelligence and org intelligence as pretty relevant. Like all of these tools, that are out there today, and you're seeing more and more vendors dive into it. Like Copart is doing, Elements is doing, SFDX Hardest is doing. Like there's a ton of tools, open source and paid, which are trying to drive a lot more of like what has happened in your org, and if you change something here, what does how does it impact the rest? So I think for IT, it's pretty important to sort of balance the two, bringing in this sort of acceleration to what they're delivering, while also trying to hold together whatever was built before they were even there. So, do you get a
Totally.
lot of students with that background? Do you see that as a common challenge or hear about it?
Not that much. I think that AI is still not only there's still a lot of catching up that the companies need to do, but I think also there's a lot of development that the AI itself needs to be doing. Um, sometimes students come to me and they show me what they're trying to do with the AI, and it looks a little bit like trying to build like a very beautiful website using just like tools from 90s or something. So I think there's a lot of growth in those underlying models that we need to have in order to have more productive systems in the companies themselves. But also, like if you look at here in Germany, for example, there's a whole industry of just sending physical letters to each other, and like the companies, when you go to a doctor, they're gonna send you like a letter, or when you go to a bank, they're gonna send you like a physical letter with your password. So like, what kind of AI are they gonna use? Like they need first, they have so much to catch up, and especially when they're gonna be introduced to all these AI things, they're gonna be so much work for them there to do that it's gonna take years and years and years to basically implement it. So I think we are so early in all of this, and I'm excited because there's a lot of work to be done on this front for the companies.
That's so well said. And I agree with you. Igor, I know we are at time. I really appreciate you sharing your insights. And for anybody who's watching, and if you're interested, you can reach out to Igor on LinkedIn or to me, and you can also connect with Learn Apex or with GPT-5. Uh, Thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate your time, Igor.
Thank you for having me.
Likewise. Take care. Bye bye.